Streaming on YouTube. Let me check my. I don't think it's. Yeah, Jim, I don't think this one's linked to. Oh, I should know it is. Channels. Go back to it. Yeah, Jim, I don't think this one's linked to.
I can hear you.
Oh, I should know it is. Channels. Go back to it. Yeah, Jim, I don't think this one's linked to. I can hear you. Oh, I should know it is.
I know what this does.
No, it's okay.
How's everybody doing? How's it going, Shane? You can see it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have it on the page though.
Should I
I
change
can-
the view?
Go back to it. No, it is on YouTube because if you click on the top, it says live on YouTube, but it just doesn't have it on the page. Let me check on. Let me see if it's working online.
I don't know who can see
I got it online. I'm seeing it.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Robin.
Everett Planning Board. Okay, cool. Yep, we're live.
Okay.
Phew. Always a positive.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Lydia.
Yeah. It says we're out live.
Yep, we're on YouTube.
All
Look at
right.
it. Look at our beautiful face.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
We don't have to be on Facebook. Cool.
Didn't the agenda say you were going to be on Facebook Live?
No,
So-
YouTube.
Says YouTube.
YouTube. Okay, my bad. I apologize.
We are on YouTube. Now, what was the conflict tonight that we couldn't do Facebook Live?
School committee.
Ah,
School committee was going on at the same time. And
no
that
big,
was an issue.
no biggie.
Robin?
Yes, we can.
Robin?
Hold
Quick
on.
question.
Yes.
I'm not going to have to reread all of the petitions for a third time this time around, right? I'm good to just pick up where we left off?
Well, you have to open the hearing, so you should at least read like the agenda item for it.
Of course, I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, just, so that folks know that you're reopening the public hearings
Yeah.
for this
Yeah.
petition.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you. I just wanted to
Yep.
be, that saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I would at least go with like the reason for denial on the agenda,
Okay, no problem.
what they're, what folks are asking for. But yeah, the public hearings are open.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
He's joking.
Eric,
Yep,
I want to let you know there are two parties of interest, the butters for 983. So when we get to that point, they're currently in the Zoom meeting,
perfect.
so they're available.
They're number one on the agenda, so
All right.
that's petition number 2458, 983 Broadway, correct?
Yeah. So it's 7 o'clock. It looks like you have a quorum. We are live. So whenever you're ready, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Here we go. Good evening. I'd like to call the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. Today is Monday, May 18th, 2020, to our live virtual meeting. I'm going to briefly explain the procedures to go, but before I do that, I'm going to read the remote participation meeting in Governor Baker's response. So anybody that may be new will be clear on it. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, the Everett Zoning Board of Appeals shall be meeting remotely until further notice. The audio conferencing application Zoom will be used for this purpose. An online link and telephone access number will be provided on all meeting agendas and also on the city's website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the city's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. The application will permit the public This application will permit the public to access and participate in future board meetings and hearings. Instructions for joining meetings in this manner and will be provided on the city and city clerk's websites. We extend our thanks for your understanding and participation in this manner, which is intended to keep members of the board and the public safe. Okay, so that's that. So at this time, I'm also going to explain I usually read the petitions, and the petitioner states his or her reasons for requesting the variance or special permit. But this evening, all of our petitions are old business, and the petitions have already been read to the public twice. So tonight, I will be reading and updating from the agenda portion, which just gives the reason for denial, so people will have an idea of what's going on. At that time, after that, we are going to start with the public hearing. All those in favor, all those opposed will be heard. This is a 2-week carryover that we've had since the last meeting in order to ensure that the public has time to make their statements, whether it's in writing or through a petition that has been signed, or they can log in to this meeting and state their opinions either in the positive or the negative. After the public has been heard, and I will close that portion of the meeting tonight, and the petitioner shall have the right to rebut any opposition or explain any type of questions that were asked. It will take a 4-yes vote in favor to be granted for a variance or a special permit. At this time, I would like the Board of Appeal members to introduce themselves, starting with Roger Thistle.
Roger Thistle.
Paul Colometta.
John Fraser.
Mike D'Antoni.
I'm Mary Gerasi, and our clerk is Roberta Supa. Okay, so at this time, we're going to need a motion to open up and take old business off the table.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion, we take petition number 2458 off the table under old business.
Roger Thistle, second that.
We have a motion to take petition number 2458 off the table of old business, and it has been seconded by Roger Thistle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the petition is now open. At this time, I'm just going to read what the summary is from the agenda. The agenda has been given out to the public. So this is petition number 2458. It is a variance. The address is 983 Broadway, Everett, Mass. 02149. And the reason for denial is the owner, the applicant, proposes to raise the existing structure and reconstruct a new 9-unit, 3-story residential structure. The corner lot is located within the business district with an area of 5,000 square feet. Relief is required in the form of a variance. At this time, could the representatives and the petitioners come forward? Actually, I'd also like to hear the public opinion. Who's calling them in tonight, Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is David O'Neill. I represent the applicant, Rex ELLC, who is online with us tonight. The manager, Sharif Abuzara, along with our architect, Peter Sandors, and our engineer, Peter Ogren of Hayes Engineering. Thank you for having us back. This project has been in the public view since at least our January 30th neighborhood meeting we had on site. In the meantime, we have brought our plans to the Everett Planning Board and received site plan approval. We received that site plan approval on May 6th. We stayed our procedure here before your board until the zoning board of appeal, the planning board rather, could have a very good opportunity to vet up our design, our traffic study, and ultimately give us the approval and endorsement of that site plan. Our project is, as was stated in the denial, is to replace the existing 1-story cinder block building located at the corner of Broadway and 2nd Street. Broadway and Essex Street, that is presently home to a Little Caesars franchise, which is shuttered presently. And in its place, construct 9 new residential dwelling units. Provide for those 9 residential dwelling units, 9
I've been doing lately too. Delivery.
off-street non-tandem parking spaces. And the relief that we're seeking tonight is for 3 items of of deviation from the allowed zoning requirements. And specifically, that is our front yard setback, our side yard, our corner lot setback, and our 9 parking space parking deficiency. I know you've had a chance to see our plans. Generally speaking, the building is 3 stories. It is well under the, I believe the height, and I apologize, it just blanked out of my head, but I know that our architect can weigh in with the specific answer to this question. It's well under the height restrictions, and it's quite in line with the surrounding buildings. If you know that section of Broadway, it's right across the corner from Gina D's hair salon. The height of our building is lower than Gina D's, and it's very much in keeping with the height. And although we're not seeking any height relief, it fits in that regard. The construction of the project will be in a traditional first floor of urban brick, very nice full brick facade. There are elements that make it very visually attractive. We had some back and forth and received some great guidance from the planning board on the design features of it to ultimately come to what's a very attractive building that will provide 7 1-unit apartments, 1 studio, and 1 2-bedroom. You know, not to go into the particulars of the design that we hashed out with the planning board, but the traffic flow is within the lot is very manageable. One of the things that we're doing that's going to make this a very favorable traffic situation is we're closing the exit or entrance rather, entrance or exit onto Broadway. One of the requirements of our site plan approval was to close off the Broadway and the Broadway curb cut. We will do that, we'll curb that, and we're going to site the building in a manner that puts it on the corner, and that's the essence of our relief. The hardship that we're facing is that the existing building, and we're going to be using much of the existing foundation. The building as it sits has no front yard or corner lot setback. So while our raising the building puts us into the category of requiring that relief, it's really going to be no different than what's there now, essentially. We are squaring off the corner. It'll be exactly like Gina D's building is on the opposite corner on that same side of Broadway. So confronted with that difficulty of the existing building condition and our need as a corner lot to have our parking configured in the back that would prevent us from moving the structure back to allow for that front yard and corner lot setback, creates the need for this variance and provides the statutory requirement of shape of lot, hardship, and existing building condition. That is essentially, what we're asking for. We did, in connection to our planning board presentation, provide a traffic study prepared by our engineer. This 9-unit residential structure, which, as I stated earlier, is going to be replacing a long line of somewhat underperforming commercial operations, which were over the years used at that site. The traffic that will be generated by these 9-unit residences will be approximately 49 total in and out trips per day, 24 in, 25 out. For a successful commercial enterprise in that location, that would probably be about an hourly traffic flow. And again, it's in the business district, so that type of commercial use would be allowed by right. So this residential use creates a far lesser traffic burden utilizing that portion of Estes Street from Lynn Street to get to the houses, to get to the proposed development. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, we are asking that you grant the requested relief in the form of variance on those 3 items of denial. And hopefully we can create a very a great improvement and a very good structure for Broadway.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. I'd like to open up to the public forum. Anyone from the public? We have 2 people, I believe, sitting to wait.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, could you please state your name, first name, last name, and address, please, for the clerk?
Yes, I'm Ida Ferragamo, and I live at 11 Estes Street in Everett, which is directly across the street. I've lived in Everett all my life, 72 years, but I've been at this property for 41 years. And at the time, there was a nice 1-family house there, and it went under construction, which I was never notified that that was going there, but that's in the past, and that's fine. They have put a lot of different buildings there, and the reason why the gentleman said that there wasn't a lot of traffic because no business could make it there. So there was never that much traffic there. Right now, this street, if you've done traffic control, we are getting a lot of traffic off the Tobin Bridge. This is definitely a cutoff. People are coming from there, down Fuller Street, down Estes Street. If I sat on my porch and counted the cars, it's tremendous. When I was raising my children, this was residential. My kids are in the 40s, 50s, very quiet street. Yes, Gina D's, that building's been there forever. Residential, never a problem. What I'm the most concerned about is the traffic that it's going to create. Right now, we are getting so much traffic coming down the street. Also, we've had numerous accidents in the last couple of years. People are speeding off Broadway, going down our street. And there was a major accident 2 weeks ago where collision. My husband and I were coming home a week ago. If we were going fast, we would have been killed. So they are cutting off. My most concern about that, like I say, it was a 1-family house. 9-family apartments seem to be so much. It's going to create a lot of havoc on the street. We have people now that are renting, and I noticed when one young people move in, they're bringing in 5 or 6 different people, which is creating even more traffic on the street. Right now, the street's quiet because of the COVID, but under normal circumstances, I park in my yard. There will not be any parking on the street at all. So my main concern is it's going to create a lot of burden to the residential people around here. So that's my main concern. It is a very, very busy street, and I'd like someone, other people to talk from the street, but that's my viewpoint. I'm not against anything, but it could be a very bad safety issue for the residents around here that have lived here for years. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak.
Anyone else?
I'd like to speak.
Okay, could you please state your first name, last name, and your address for the clerk to record?
My name is Lisa Collins.
Don't stop crying.
Let me go on, let me create an email address.
And I live at 15 SD
And
Street.
then I'll call you back.
No. And I feel the same way that Ida Ferragamo feels. We are neighbors. So essentially I live across the street from the parking area, the building as well. And there's so much traffic.
Yeah, you can go, stay open, you can call them on
It's
Monday.
getting out of hand. It's a lot of traffic. And like she mentioned, it is a cut-through street. And in the evening, it's so loud with the traffic. My bedroom is in front of the house in the evening. I know you're not gonna believe me, but I have to sleep with an earplugs because the traffic, it's like the speedway. Mario Andretti comes by 1,000 times a night. And another issue that I'd like to address is, other than the speeding traffic, they come down the one-way, even though it was up to me and I made them put the one-way sign out past Ida Ferragamo's house because people were coming the wrong way. Well, obviously, people don't care. They're constantly coming down the one-way. And now we have a new situation on SD Street. I don't know why Cataldo Ambulance decided to come zooming down our street when they're going somewhere. I understand they're in a hurry, but when they're coming from Broadway and they go down Estes, zooming with the siren, and then they turn onto Broadway, that's going to be a huge, huge disaster. I don't know why they changed their route, but that's a new issue that's going to be also crazy if they build anything. The other issue, I have quite a few here, I hope you'll bear with me. Another issue is that, there's going to be 9 apartments. They're saying, well, we have parking for 9 people, 9 apartments. Well, if those people have guests and they have company, like Ida Ferragamo said, we won't be able to get out of our street. And when the snow comes, the plow won't be able to plow because cars are going to be parked on both sides. People that are in their driveway will never be able to get out. We can't even get out now. I have to go, back in and nose out, because if I go straight into my driveway, I can't get out. People park now, they block my driveway. Who knows what's going to happen later on? Another issue I have is when we went to the meeting in January, we were told that they were going to put the trash barrels in the basement of this apartment, which I really don't think is going to be a good idea. So then they said, well, they're going to put a dumpster. Well, they said the dumpster is going to be enclosed. Whether the dumpster is enclosed or not, it still creates mice and rats because they smell what's in the dumpster. It doesn't make it perfume smelling because it's enclosed. And there's going to be mice and rats, and then they're going to come to the homes. And another issue I have is they're saying there's going to be 9 parking spots. Well, if someone has 2 and 3 cars, and families do, and 2 people live together, they both have a car, it's not going to work. And if people maybe have a few much to drink or whatever the problem is with them, they're going to come in that parking lot, and the house next door on the other side of that fence is way too close for these people to come in late at night. And how can anybody say they know how many times people are going to go in and out of that apartment? Oh, they're only going to go in once and out once, in the morning, at night. Sometimes you go out 4 or 5 times in a day. How can they judge people aren't going to be high traffic in that location? I don't know how they can do that. But those are my concerns. And, I don't know which one is worse, whether it's the one-way or the ambulance going. There's going to be a major accident someday. And when there's 9 more apartments over there, it's going to be worse. And I don't think it's fair to the people that live here now to have to reroute their whole life because someone wants to put 9 more apartments over there. It's just not feasible in my situation. So that's what I have to say. And once again, the things that Ida Ferragamo said, I agree with her wholeheartedly. This is a cut-through street. At night, it's absolutely horrible. You can't even sit on the front porch without having noise go by you. So, let's not make it less enjoyable for the people that are homeowners now. That's how I feel. I have nothing else to say.
Okay, thank you for your word. Is there anyone else that would like to speak publicly?
Yeah, I have to say.
Could you state your first name, last name, and your address clearly for the clerk to record?
Okay, my name is Lakshmi and the last name is Basukala. I live in next to the proposed building, 12 Stitch Street. And my main concern is like, Aida and Lisa, they already told about the traffic things, but I live next to the building, and my driveway is just like they are proposed their driveway. So still, I mean, even nowadays, it's hard to get out from my driveway because I have two kids, and I have to go in and out like more than 10, 20 times a day because of the school. I have to drop off them and pick it up. So the thing is, if they use the one exit and entrance, it's gonna be huge problem for me, because if they are trying to get out from the same building, I mean same exit, the driveway, and go in the same I mean entry, so one car have to wait into just behind my driveway. So this is gonna be the main problem for me, especially, also my kids, they are just 3 and 6 now. All day they are playing around, my driveway and also backyard. So I'm really nervous about like a nine unit building, and what kind of people they are coming there. That's a different story. The main story is if they use the same, like, exit from the Broadway or state, they can use only like one exit and one entrance. If they use like that way, I'm okay. So that's my main concern. And also the same, like in this part of State Street, there is only like 7 houses, and we park. I mean, the most of us, we know we can park in the both side of street, but we don't do it because of it's hard to get out from the driveway. So if new people are coming, and also in their plan they have only like a 5 parking spot, I know 4 or 5, definitely they're gonna use in the street. They have no other choices, so they go into the park in the both sides. They don't care because they are new, and they need to the parking spot. So that time it will going to be the narrow the street, and like it's gonna be more traffic, and this gonna be more problem. Yeah. Thank you. That this is all my concern.
Thank you.
I have one more thing I'd like to say.
Anyone else? Sure. Go ahead, Lisa.
I'm sorry. I'm probably repeating myself, but I just want to tell you that my husband does not like to back into the driveway. And there's been many times now that people that live on the street choose to park on the other side of the street. And it always seems that they're parking opposite our driveway. And many, many times my husband is leaving for work, and he can't even pull out and turn to get onto the street. What he has to do, he has to go straight, and then he has to kind of go onto the driveway in front of the Ferragamo's house, and then go out on their driveway and go down their ramp on their driveway. Because sometimes people will park on the other side. And like I said, it always seems to be across from our driveway. And my husband now, without another disaster, cannot get out of the driveway. So, it seems like we're all saying the same thing, that because this is a very small street and it's a narrow street, we don't need any more traffic than what we already have. And what we have is horrendous. People now have guests in the summer, 5, 6 cars come, they park anywhere. It's a mess as it is. So I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but I'm just trying to really, really stress the parking and the traffic on this street. And I've complained not only this time, I've asked the city many times to put a sign up, no driving after certain hours, because it's too noisy after certain hours, but obviously it didn't happen. But I mean, if there's more traffic, I mean, it's gonna be so much worse. And like Ida Ferragamo said, right now, because of COVID, people will maybe come around and say, oh, only 2 or 3 cars came by. Well, you gotta come by at night. It has nothing to do with COVID. It's horrible at night. So, I just wanna stress that the traffic and the parking on this street is horrendous. So I don't want to say anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ida, last call.
Yeah, my husband would just, Len would like to say something.
Could you state your first and last name and address, please, sir, for the,
It's Leonard Ferragamo.
Yeah.
I live at 11 SD Street, Everett, Mass. with my wife Ida. And I just want to mention again, the traffic, if you try to back into to my driveway with the people coming off of that Tobin Bridge and wanting to get home at nighttime, it's horrendous. They give you the finger, they yell at you, they don't give you the chance to, like, if I back in and almost hit the fence, or I'm not really straight in and try to pull forward, I'm gonna have an accident. I'm gonna slam, they're gonna slam into me, plain and simple. And now, 9-unit apartment going there, I can imagine the parking here on this street. It's gonna be horrendous. And with the traffic, it's just a cutoff. It's the quickest way to get off that Tobin Bridge, off of Sergeant Street, come down Fuller, and there's a traffic monitor, speed limit monitor on Fuller Street. Why? Because they fly down Fuller Street. Ida and myself, we walk that all the time. Cars, it's like Daytona.
Yeah.
It's
Fuller Street is.
I'll tell you, it's amazing. Okay, and parking in Everett, they don't care. They'll park on the sidewalk. They park, these apartment buildings. You see these big trucks, big cars parked on Broadway, and half the cars on the sidewalk. And that's what happens. That's just what happens with these big unit apartment buildings. If you can't park enough cars in the driveway or have parking, it's just going to be a problem to me, because it's already a problem in Everett.
Right, thank you, sir.
I could take you on
All
a
right.
walk and
All right.
see what goes on. But
Thank
that's all I
you.
got to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the public forum?
Mary, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor McLaughlin.
Madam Chairwoman, Councilor Michael McLaughlin, 9 Baldwin Place. Thank you for this time this evening. First of all, let me thank Jim Soper and Attorney O'Neill for both allowing these residents to be able to be a part of this conversation this evening. 2 weeks ago, you know that the petitioner came forward, and Mr. O'Neill, the gentleman that he always is, allowed a 2-week advance so that these individuals could sign on tonight and be a part of this discussion, because it does impact their neighborhood and their lives on a daily basis. So I want to thank both of those individuals for the time to allow us to coordinate this evening for the residents to be heard. Couple of things that I just wanted to stress on. One was, if you hadn't saw my press release in last week's newspaper, it's exactly what I hit on last week, which was the traffic coming off of Route 1 South. Everett has become the cut-through city of the North Shore. It's very unfair to the residents of the city of Everett that we are being utilized and underutilized by the disadvantage of the cars coming off of Route 1, not going over the Tobin Bridge and using Everett as a cut-through. And we're going to see another piece tonight later on Broadway that is going to be impacted by the traffic flow of these vehicles. I had the opportunity to meet with the gentleman, I'm sorry I forget his name, that lives right next door to the lot over the beginning of the winter time, and I apologize for slipping his name right now. But
Mike, you're muted. Mike? Mike?
Mr. McLaughlin?
Councilor McLaughlin?
yes.
Well, you were muted for all of what you just said. I could not hear you.
Could you repeat that?
I apologize.
Thank you.
I'm going to
I
try
don't
to
think
make.
it was you. I think it was technology, to be truthful, because I didn't see the mute sign up.
Okay, so I apologize if you hadn't heard any of it, or I'm not sure where you.
From the second, when you talked about the cut-throughs, about.
So yeah, so sure. So I met with the gentleman that lives right next door to the property and his wife on a Saturday morning, and the amount of vehicles that drove down the street during that half-hour conversation that we had was unbelievable. You can't imagine what it must be like during the weekdays and the amount of vehicles that are using SD Street as a cut-through. That being said, this development is actually a good development for that site compared to what some of the other options could be or would be. That being said, I hoped that we would see an entrance and exit it on both sides of this facility, one being on Broadway and the other being on SD Street, which would give 50% less traffic flow on SD Street. As the gentleman who lives right next door said, if that was if that was one way it was SD's and one way it was Broadway, that I think would make a big difference on SD Street itself. I did not realize that the planning board had already given approval for Broadway to be closed off until tonight. I heard that for the first time this evening. I think that is a short sight, to be quite honest, because I think having entrance and exit from that one site on SD Street is really detrimental to SD Street, to the flow of traffic. And the saddest part of this whole entire conversation tonight is we're talking about how we community with the impact of the North Shore. If we didn't have the cars coming off of Route 1 and using our city as a cut through, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because as the residents of SD Street can tell, the number of impacted cars throughout the last 8 to 9 weeks since the COVID-19 has hit our community has been diminished greatly. And that is because the cars from the North Shore aren't using Everett as a cut-through community. So if that wasn't happening, we wouldn't even be having this discussion tonight, to be quite honest. So we have a bigger problem in the city of Everett, and that's what we need to work on in a bigger manner, because negativity of others should not be talked about on how we redevelop our community and move our city forward for the future of our development. So if there's an option to be able to look at creating an exit and an entrance using Estes and Broadway, I think that should be back on the table. If not, I think we need to go back to the drawing board on this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilor McLaughlin. And anyone else for the public forum? Okay, at this time, I'd like to give it back to Attorney O'Neill, please, to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Actually, excuse me, Attorney O'Neill, I'd like to close the public forum to this meeting right now at this time and turn it back over to Attorney O'Neill.
Madam Chair, I would just suggest that you keep the public portion open until you're ready to vote, just in case there's any back and forth you want to be able to address.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You can close it then.
All right, so the public is open and Attorney O'Neill will respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We did hear many of these concerns, if not all of them, at our neighborhood meeting back in January. And Councilman McLaughlin was there and heard loud and clear that the problem really isn't our site. It's not the 9 residences that are going to be, that we're looking to develop on this site. The problem is, as the neighbors state, cars coming from other parts of the state to get to other parts of Everett. It's not our site that's causing and creating this traffic. The biggest favor we could do to this neighborhood in terms of the future utilization of this site would be this type of residential development. I'll state again, a commercial retail drive-through or a successful in and out business is probably going to put tenfold more cars on SD Street in and out in order to sustain a business. Just as we've been, things have quieted down because of the pause of COVID and things are quieter, the neighbors have had a shuttered business there for a while. Prior to that, they had relatively unsuccessful businesses. There will be a use, or there could be a use of that property that would be successful, far more traffic creating, far more parking intensive, and far more detrimental to the neighbors. So again, how do we arrive at an in and out study? It's, yeah, sure, somebody may come in more than once or twice a day into their property, but things average out. And that's where we come to the traffic quote that we gave you earlier of 49 cars per day. It's not plausible, and the prospect of changing the siting of the building creates the shape that we're stuck with in terms of developing it. To have it parking for 9 cars with a second entrance, well, we would have less space for parking and the project would not be viable. Further, it would put more cars, we'd be seeking a greater a greater variance or a greater number of or fewer parking spots and a greater number of cars that would be out in the neighborhood if we had less parking on site. So again, the traffic thing is not our making, in my opinion, and I think our numbers support and logic supports that this use will be a great help to preventing a far more traffic intensive use of that property. We can't go back to the past and either make it a single bedroom or one family house. It's just not the reality of today's needs for housing and the cost of this development. Someone stated earlier that there was only 5 parking spots on site. No, there are 9. Our plans are clear, there are 9. There is no change from the exit as presently situated that would impact on the neighbor's driveway. We're not getting our opening closer to his driveway. It's where it's always been. So there were, again, going back to fewer cars in a residential use than there would be in any retail use. Overcrowding, these are relatively small units. Some of the things that we are blessed with in Everett is our 2 and 3 family houses are huge. They have multiple bedrooms. So that when a 2-unit comes on the market in some of these older 2 families in Everett, they're very large and they lend themselves to having multiple people living there. Our units are between 450 and averaging 500 to 600 for our 1 bedrooms. And again, we've only got 1 2-bedroom. And that's just 1,000. So there's 1,000 square foot of living space. So there's really no likelihood of that being overpopulated. Cars going the wrong way down a one-way street. Again, enforcement issues. Our use is going to be far more easily regulated than a retail use would be. We're going to know who's using our parking spaces. It's going to be a rental property. The leases are going to be signed and the parties are going to be identified who live there. Whereas in a retail use, it would be whoever chooses to make a trip to that place that day, and it's going to lend itself to lack of concern for the neighbors. Whereas our residential use is going to create a neighborhood or create contributors to the neighborhood. We've also talked about off-street parking. Our leases are going to say you get 1 parking space and you cannot apply for off-street parking with the city. We've talked about that at the planning board and with the possibility of that being a condition that we could certainly, we're prepared to adopt. And a few of the things to address specifically, concern over dumpster, there's not going to be a dumpster. The discussion of barrels outside, we've reconciled that with our planning board submission, that the individual barrels are going to be stored on the first floor level. There's an area on our floor plan that gets the barrels off the, inside, not in the basement, but in a utility space on the first floor. So that's a non-issue. There's not going to be a dumpster or trash cans outside. The fence around the building is going to be improved. There's going to be a buffer in terms of keeping the cars that are on site. We're not disturbing the tree that's there. That's going to be part of the appeal of the property. And, again, the concerns that are voiced by the residents are the same concerns that Councilman McLaughlin heard back in January. Yeah, there are other things that need to be addressed in the city, but to limit or deny this developer the very limited relief he is seeking for a project of a very modest size, much unlike some of the other projects that have been approved with far greater grants of relief for parking deficiencies, 20 and 40 in similarly cited properties. It simply would be an unfair application of the board's discretion. In addition to the what we think is ample off-street parking, we are within steps of a dedicated bus line. There are public transportation options that are going to make this a very easy sell for somebody without a car or with one car. This is a fairly generous allotment of off-street parking, given what we've seen in Everett's development. I think I've hit all the points that we've talked about and were raised. But again, I go back to my initial point, which is these neighbors will be very well served by what they don't get in terms of a larger by right residential development or a retail use that would greatly increase their traffic concerns. So this is a right-sized, appropriate development that needs very little relief, and we would ask that the board grant that.
Okay, thank you, Attorney O'Neill. Now I'd like to open the meeting up to questions from the board, and I actually would like to start with a quick question.
May I
Attorney O'Neill,
say, have a rebuttal to that?
That's not how we usually do it.
There's no
All right,
cross
that's
discussion
fine.
out there, sorry.
I mean,
I
the
wanted-
public hearing is still open, but you can certainly wait till the end if you want to give the board a chance to talk, but
Is that, I'm gonna have the board ask questions now at this time.
I mean, you can come back.
I'd appreciate it.
You can come back to the public,
We'll
but
come back
you
to it after,
certainly
'cause I think
Thank-
sometimes, ma'am, when you hear the board's questions, your questions get resolved along the way as well.
Thank you.
So,
I have something I'd like to say.
like I said, the board's gonna ask questions, and then after, you'll have a chance to re-ask questions if they're not answered along the way, okay?
Yeah,
Attorney O'Neill, I have a quick question that I'd like to start with regarding the trash, actually. I know that it's gonna be now out of the parking lot. It's not going to be dumpsters, it's going to be barrels. Will those barrels be put out onto Broadway rather than the Esty Street side where the address is Broadway? Like, so they're not like clogging up the sidewalks on Esty Street, or their odors are not, heading down Esty, they'll just keep it cleaner for Esty Street?
I don't know what the city's regulation is in terms of where the barrels get put out for pickup. But, we'd be open to the suggestion of the board as to what would be a better placement for them. There is no, I don't think and I would invite either our developer or our architect to weigh in on that, but I believe that we'd be open to placing.
My feeling is that they should be the address is Broadway, so they should be put out on the Broadway side of the corner.
So my name is Sharif. I'm the developer here, and I don't mind putting them on Broadway Street if I'm legally allowed to.
I would think so, because that's your address. You would have to check with the city.
Okay,
But if at all possible, that's a recommendation. That we would-
that's okay. I'll do that if I can.
I also want to reiterate the parking, that it will be in all of the leases. Every time a tenant enters, moves in and moves out, every new tenant for the duration of the existence of the building. If you were to flip it and sell it, you have to sell it with the parking condition of no street parking, every residential parking stickers in each lease for the duration of the life of the building.
Agreed.
Okay, that's definitely, so if you were to sell it next week after it was built, that would have to be in the contract that whoever the new owner is would have to require in the leases, no residential parking stickers.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's protected for the duration of the life of it. What else do I have? So I realized with the planning board, I was going to ask about, entrance on Estes Street and exit on Broadway with a right turn only leaving Broadway. But I know that the planning board already set a condition to close that.
Correct.
So that's null and void. Those were my concerns and questions. I'd like to open up any other questions to the board, please.
I have some. That last thing you mentioned, is that in fact a closed issue that it can't be one way in and one way out? It may be what the planning board wants, but I don't really like the idea of in and out on that in one spot.
Well,
I agree with Mr. Diatone on that.
there's only the configuration of the property, in order to use the building and use the footprint that we've got, and have off-street parking, we have to have, there's parking where there would be an exit. So the trade-off of more parking on site comes at the expense of a second egress. More so, the economics of the building and the footprint of the building, if we had to make it a smaller footprint, you know, we're going to have to go up higher. And one of the things that's appealing about this project is that I think it caps out at about 34 feet in height. Now, the zoning ordinance allows height of up to 65 feet. In my opinion, to compress the footprint and raise it up would be, you know, now we're talking about casting shadows on the surrounding properties. And again, that's something that the developer could do by right. So while we've got a developer who isn't trying to, you know, build to the moon here, the trade-off is that, you know, that the traffic circulates. Now, remember, Estes is one way. So those cars are only, the only house that they're passing when they leave that lot is their own. They're not going back down Estes Street to get to Lynn Street because it's one way. So to say that the exit traffic is going to cause a problem to the neighbors, this doesn't hold water, because the exit, it's right, and then you're on to Broadway, only passing 683 Broadway, the development site. You know,
before you go on, the idea of building taller, you're worried about the shadow issue, or, I mean, where's the parking now? Is it under, or is it just around?
It's around. So there's the design of the building puts cantilevers out in the back and puts 4 parking spots under the overhang, and the other 5 are fully open air.
I don't know. What would be the problem when instead of a 9-unit building, put up a 6-unit building, and then you would probably get everything you'd want out of it?
Yeah, in terms of the number of units here, you know, our options are really a 9-unit residential or a retail use. So, you know, we're here with what we think is less impactful to the neighborhood, with a 9 residential unit. Putting up a 6-unit residence is not financially viable, and if you know, if the developer is not given relief for the 3 areas of denial that we were presented from the building department, then this is not going to be a residential development. It's going to be a retail development, and you know, or something that you know, frankly, would not be right-sized to the neighborhood.
I'd like to add as well, if we went 6 units, would have 12 parking spots instead of the 9. So that would be an increase of parking spots, which would also add to the traffic and even higher count, because multiple people with cars.
We have our own stopgaps for that by not allowing residential stickers. So if you give me 1 spot per unit, don't have a problem.
Okay, and yeah, so we have 1 spot per unit.
Let me ask you this: what happens, Sharif, if you raise the building 10 feet taller? And wouldn't that open up parking maybe, and open up some of the underground density?
So if I go any taller, I think the architect can better answer this in terms of what the code is and all of that.
Which one is the architect?
That's Peter Sandors. He's actually a former resident of Estes Street.
Yes, I'm here. So it creates a couple of issues. It creates a building that we now have to provide 2 stairways instead of 1. We have to provide an elevator, which we don't have. So it's a much different project, right? It's much.
But it may fit better in that space. That's where I'm getting at here.
Well, and you are right, it would be 10 feet higher. And to answer your question, Dave, it's 34 feet, 6 inches to the top of the parapet. So the roof of the building is actually 3 feet below that.
Yeah, on Broadway, I don't think, in that spot on Broadway, I don't think height would be an issue, to me. I mean, in my estimation. And I just think you're trying to cram a lot in a small area here. I don't have to live down there. But if these people are that troubled by it, I have to listen to what they're saying to me. But that's just my opinion. Let's see. Make sure that's all I have. I have a question for Jim Soper, actually. Is Jim with us still?
Jim?
I am.
Jim, that new transportation plan that we had with the other big projects, can we get all these new projects to buy into that, or how does that work?
Well, that works through the planning board, and I'm not sure that we're framing the ordinance right now, but I believe it's at 10 units. Okay, so I'm not sure of the Traffic Management Association and that group that will be formed are going to have any jurisdiction over this at all, being that it's 9 units. So that's how that stands.
Okay, so it's
Okay, that's all on my side.
okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I believe we had 2 people, Ida, from the public who had another question. Was your question answered along the way, or?
Yes, it was somewhat, but I just wanted a rebuttal. We do live around here, and most of the people that assume what's going on do not live around here. Yes, the traffic is a problem, but also putting a building like that at the corner of the street, it's going to change the whole. I mean, we have one, Everett is still Everett. Like I say, I came from the village to this part. And it's just, do you want to keep families in Everett? And it's so important to honor the people that are living here, as well as the developers that want to build, because none of them live here. They can assume everything they want. The man that lived on Esty Street, he grew up, it was wonderful, because I've talked to him. But if they were going to put this building on his beautiful Esty Street where he lived, he would not be saying, oh, this is so nice. So it's just for the future. You want people to move into Everett. This is a nice section. I'm not for, bring in development, but you have to look at the overall picture of Everett. I mean, we don't mind the development, but please take into consideration what you're doing to the people that are here right now. And it's not only traffic. I mean, I can sit on my front porch. I've looked at that building. Yes, it's residential. It's been business, but it hasn't created that much traffic that I believe, and congestion that I believe 9 more families in there. Like they said, at this end of Esty Street, they put in a beautiful two-family duplex. That property to me doesn't seem big enough to have a 9-unit, even though it's commercial, it just doesn't seem feasible. Okay. And that's, I don't know. I mean, I've been here long, so I raised my kids, I've done everything. So, but the impact for Everett for the future, I mean, if you're an Everett person, you're from Everett. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank
you.
Lisa?
Just one thing, that when I heard the owner of the property talking, I think it was the owner, correct me if I'm wrong, they're indicating is there gonna be one way in and one way out? Is that my understanding? And on Estes, they're gonna be able to go in and they're gonna actually come out on Estes as well. Is that my understanding? They're gonna enter and come out on Estes as well?
Yes,
Okay, so I just wanna know if somebody is waiting for someone to come out and they have to wait to go in, and there's an ambulance flying down the street, going to an emergency to save someone's life. Once again, this is a new thing here, and I don't know, I've only been here, I'm gonna be here 14 years in September. And we've never had this all of a sudden recently. So I wanna know what's gonna happen when Cataldo has their siren going crazy, zooming down Estes. They're gonna come to a screeching halt, waiting for someone to go in and someone to come out. What are they thinking? What are these people thinking? The ambulance has to save someone's life wherever they are, and we're gonna have to have them, and sometimes, this is no joke, and Ida Ferragamo and the gentleman across the street, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I know you, Zizi, okay. We have numerous funerals down this street because they go have a funeral in Broadway, they come down Broadway, they turn down Estes, and then they turn on Broadway again, and they go to the big cemetery. And sometimes it can be maybe 10 minutes with a funeral. So what's gonna happen? There's all kinds of issues on this street that with any more traffic, and I know these people, they wanna build, they wanna sell, they wanna rent, whatever they wanna do, but they're not thinking, they're thinking everyone's gonna have one parking space. But what's gonna happen to someone with the other cars? They're gonna have to park somewhere, whether they're gonna get a sticker or not, they're gonna have to park. And saying we're not gonna allow them a parking sticker, well, I don't know how you're gonna do that. But I'm just saying that in one way and out one way, and the ambulance come flying down, it's gonna be a mess. And they don't live here, and I said this in the meeting in January to somebody, you don't live here, you're not here 24/7, you don't see what we see, you don't understand what's gonna happen. They're thinking on their end, they have to think about the residents and the people that live here. And I'm not gonna say any more about the parking, but they don't live here, they don't know what goes on, we do. Bottom line, that's the end.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have further, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm the site engineer on the project, and I would just like to point out that the 24-foot aisle width is wide enough so that a car can be waiting to exit the site and still allow a vehicle to enter the site. So the scenario that was just set forth should not occur because that's the standard 24-foot aisle width.
Thank you. That was my next question.
If I might, Madam Chairman, that's the current situation on the property as it is. So it's not there. We're not changing the fact that cars can enter and exit onto Estes Street. The setup is not going to change. So we're not preventing the scenario, the in and out, which has obviously been clarified by Peter, is nothing different than presently exists.
And I'd like to add something as well. Given in the last 2 years, the site has not been occupied by Little Caesars. So there has been no traffic whatsoever that's been there at all. I've been approached numerous times by other restaurants and I've, said no or put them on hold because I'm going through this process, and that would be a conflict of interest in terms of what, I don't want to lead anybody on. So if I did accept one of those restaurants, the traffic would just come right back to, what it is now. And this project would make sure that it's not 20 cars per hour, it's 49 cars per day.
Mr. O'Neill, where is the entrance on this property is in fact going to be on Broadway?
No, on Estes Street.
No. The entrance to the building is on Estes?
To the building itself?
Yes.
Doorway? Yeah, there's a doorway on Broadway.
And there's a doorway on from the parking lot as well.
Yes.
But I'm saying like that scenario of somebody waiting for somebody, they would probably do it out on Broadway if that was the case.
That's the front. Yeah.
That is the front.
Yep.
Okay.
And to Mr. D'Antoni, to address your question about the Transportation Management Association, we did, while there's nothing in place, I have spoken to the developer about adopting some of the transportation practices that are going to be required of the larger developments. Specifically, he's going to provide T-passes, introductory T-passes to tenants, and obviously our commitment and requirement that there will be no off-street parking passes or stickers applied for. Those are commitments that we're gonna make.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, Michael McLaughlin, City Council. Can I ask Mr. O'Neill just one quick question?
You can't ask him a question, but you can just state what you want.
Okay, so my only thought, Madam Chairman, to you is what changes the number of spots on the lot if the entrance or exit were to be created on Broadway? I understand Mr. O'Neill said that it would decrease the number of parking spots on the lot, but is that by one spot or is that by multiple spots? I think for me, that's the biggest sticking point of this whole development, because I'm in favor of it. I think that the residents are going to get a good development down there if this were to be one way in and one way out of this lot. And the developer, I absolutely believe, wants to do the right thing. And I know he wants to do the right thing by the neighborhood, by his patients here, to allow them to have an opportunity to speak. From 2 weeks ago, it proves that he wants to be a good neighbor. Nobody's trying to do anything that's not going to be beneficial to the neighborhood. I just wanted to know what the difference of number of spots would be on that if we were to create a second egress.
Well, that might be a question that I would have to refer to the engineer and the architect. But before they chime in on that, remember, we're only talking the number of trips in and out being generated by this residential use are so far fewer than a retail use. I mean, we're not talking half as many trips for residential. We're talking approximately 10% of what would be in and out for a retail use. So, we can divide 49 trips by 2, or we can divide 500 trips by 2. And we're so much better off from SD Street usage to having this project than we would for any other project, whether it's shifting it over, making it higher, making it narrower, and creating some kind of a second egress, which in the past, and again at our meeting, one of the things that neighbors were commenting on was how that Broadway entrance created a cut through onto SD Street and sent people going the wrong way. We're eliminating that, and that's one of the safety factors that was appealing to the planning board with our proposal for the site as is.
Yeah, let me add to that as well. From Little Caesars, while they were there, they received numerous complaints from the surrounding neighbors that people were coming off the bus stop and going straight across the parking lot, and often causing, putting trash down there and whatnot. And we wanted to do this intentionally because we believed it would stop the cut through from people going across that. So we thought that was a good thing.
Okay, yeah, in terms of, there really isn't, the footprint that we've got in the existing foundation that is there are the reasons for this relief. And, again, a different project